I've never been this embarrassed in my entire career, and I'll live with that the rest of my life. Those were the words that Larry Bird said to reporters after his team got swept by the Milwaukee Bucks. He wasn't used to this kind of defeat. I'm sure you know very well the kind of success that Larry Bird and the Boston Celtics had in the 80s. They won 3 championships, and they reached the finals a total of 5 times. But there was one season where everything seemed to go wrong, and that was in 1983. They won 7 fewer games from the previous year, and Larry Bird got swept for the only time in his career. This team didn't suffer any major injuries, and they even added more talent to this already loaded team. So the $1 million question is, what on earth happened? This was a question that many were pondering at the time. Milwaukee Bucks legend and Hall of Famer Sidney Moncrief heard all the talk surrounding this series, and he took it upon himself to answer this question. He said this to reporters after completing the sweep. I know a lot of Boston fans are wondering what happened to their Celtics, but they just got beaten by a better team at the time. What a curious but yet insightful comment. Surely, he recognized that the Celtics had better players and were the better team on paper. In fact, they won 5 more games in the regular season. However, there's something that we need to establish to fully understand what happened. Just because a team has more talent, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are the better team. For a team to reach its full potential, there has to be chemistry between the players and coaches. There has to be a system in place to make the most of all the talent the team has. But as Moncrief said at the end of his comment, they were beaten by a better team at the time. And at that time, there were many unresolved issues that made this team underachieve. Let's discuss some of those problems that the Celtics were having. The first major problem was that this team had too much talent. In some instances, having too much talent can be as deadly as having too few. This was the case for Boston. Let's take a look at the roster that they had. Their front court consisted of Tiny Archibald, Danny Ainge, Quinn Buckner, and Gerald Henderson, as well as swingmen Charles Bradley and ML Carr. These are players who are good enough to play big minutes for any team. So in an attempt to make everyone happy, everyone but Carr started at least 5 games. This resulted in a multitude of combinations and reduced playing time. You can imagine how the lack of stability in a player's role could discourage and frustrate them. There was even an anonymous Celtics player who told Sports Illustrated, quote, "Now with so many good players on the team, it's easy to get disgruntled," end of quote. As the season went on, that's exactly what we saw. There was a change in the team's body language that was even more apparent in the second half of the season. They experienced a change in their roster that seemed to make sense on paper, but it ended up in disaster. In mid-January, the Celtics traded a rookie center for Scott Wedman. He was a 2-time All-Star that averaged 16 points per game for his career up to that point. He was also used to playing over 30 minutes per game. But now he was sharing the backup duties with ML Carr, and he only averaged 12 minutes per contest for the Celtics that season. Why would they make this move when they were already loaded at the forward position? My guess is that they were trying to keep up with the Philadelphia 76ers. They added Moses Malone in the offseason, and they were dominating. Maybe they thought they weren't good enough to beat this team as constructed. They lost to the Sixers in the conference finals the previous year in 7 games, and that was without Moses. Maybe they felt the pressure to make some moves to match up with them in the playoffs. They took a risk, and it wasn't paying off. The record with Scott Wedman in the lineup was 27-17. Before his arrival, they were 28-9. It was obvious that this team couldn't adjust to their new roles. Their lack of cohesiveness made them an inconsistent team. Even while playing with the most unselfish superstar that you'll ever come across, it just wasn't enough to make everyone happy. But that wasn't the only problem that this team had. They were also expressing frustration with their head coach, Bill Fitch. How do we know this? Well, the New York Times reported that some players have implied that they were tired of his drill sergeant coaching methods. Then there was another anonymous Celtics player who mentioned to the newspaper, quote, The man has a lot of good things to say. He just has some awful ways of saying them. You can only call someone dumb or stupid for so long." End of quote. I believe Bill was a victim of circumstance. When you're winning, no one has any problems with your coaching methods. But when players aren't happy and you're losing, the coach is usually the one that gets all the blame. Bill was no exception to this thing that we've been doing to coaches for decades. It was a combination of those two things that affected every Celtics player except one. That player, of course, was Larry Bird. All that outside noise wasn't affecting him, and he had a career year. Even with all the talent the team had, he recorded career highs in points, rebounds, and assists. He was able to keep this team afloat during some rough stretches, and he played a big part in Boston finishing with 56 wins. As much as they struggled, they still finished with the second best record in the Eastern Conference. They had arguably the best player in the world and the deepest team in the league. They had every right to be considered as championship contenders. But everything came crashing down when they faced the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round. They exposed this team and they swept them by an average margin of 11.8 points. They were also out-rebounded in all 4 games, and they were unable to score over 100 points. Game 1 was the worst showing by this supposed juggernaut, as they lost by 21 points on their home floor. In the following game, they were without Larry Bird, who was sidelined due to an illness. However, this didn't seem to affect them at first. They started the game scorching hot, and they were up by 17 points in the second half. But in the end, they went ice cold, and they were only able to score 9 points in the fourth quarter. The last 2 games seemed to have played out the same way. The Celtics would start the game hot, but then would get run out the court by the backcourt duo of Marcus Johnson and Sidney Moncrief. After the sweep, there's a lot of finger pointing that was going on. Some of the players were blaming the coaches. The coach blamed the media for causing a divide in the team. Larry Bird was the only sane one who blamed the loss on themselves. The Milwaukee Bucks made the Celtics realize that they needed to make some changes in order to regain their championship form. They did that by getting rid of some of the excess talent that they had in the guard position and bringing in Dennis Johnson. He was going to help tremendously on the defensive end. They also got rid of Bill Fitch, and they promoted Casey Jones as the head coach. He was going to bring a much more calming presence on the sideline. Those changes helped Boston win the title in the following season, and they were even able to exact revenge on the Bucks in the conference finals by beating them 4-1. It didn't take them long to get back on course, but in the end, they had to learn the hard way that it takes more than talent to win in the NBA. But what about you all? What do you remember about this season, and what do you think was the main reason why the 1983 Celtics underachieved? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.